Welcome. I'm Sulani Madsen, and this is a reader feedback edition of Forthright on a recent column on Governor Inslee's proposal to intimidate candidates and elected officials from exercising their right to free speech on penalty of prosecution. As first published February 3rd, 2022 in the Spokesman-Review, here's the column. Irony abounds in election integrity debate. When drafting Washington state legislation making it a misdemeanor to knowingly repeat a lie, it would seem especially important to avoid making misleading statements. And yet, Senate Bill 5843 was introduced at a news conference with misinformation. Before diving into a spicy dish of political irony, let's establish common ground. Impugning motives is off limits in the legislature. Republicans are not knowingly opponents of voter access, and Democrats are not reckless opponents of voter integrity. Everyone in the legislature is there intending to do good, but the road to hell has been paved with good intentions for millennia. It's the outcomes that matter. Two bills passed out of the Washington Senate's State Government and Elections Committee and take very different approaches to protecting democracy and our elections in the state. SB 5843 seeks to restrict political speech. SB 5650 reminds voters there are consequences to voting illegally. SB 5843 would make it a gross misdemeanor for a candidate or elected official to knowingly make false statements regarding the election process or results with an intent to deceive the public regarding the election process or result of an election, and which interfered with a voter's ability to cast their ballot, intimidated a voter, or deterred a voter from voting freely. Governor Jay Inslee introduced SB 5843 at a January 27 news conference with assurances the bill does not violate First Amendment rights to free speech because his staff had consulted experts in constitutional law. Quote, "We do not say you are free to lie on your taxes," said the governor in his prepared remarks. And how did he say we'd decide it's a lie? Quote, "We do it the American way, which is a jury system. Today, if you are accused of knowingly lying on your taxes, you are judged by a jury, and that is the same constitutional guarantee we would provide for those people who may have knowingly lied about an election result, and it would be up to the prosecution to show that you knew that." End of quote. Well, the IRS is not in the habit of conducting jury trials to decide if taxpayers are knowingly lying. According to Eve Weisenberger, CPA and an experienced tax preparer, quote, "The IRS auditor is the one who decides whether you're lying or not. It's on a one-on-one basis. It's not like you're in court. They're the one who decides if it was purposeful. Based on your sincerity, you either have a negligence penalty or you don't. If the taxpayer and or the tax professional disagree with the auditor, they have the right to appeals." End quote. It's a long road before you get to a jury. An elected prosecutor would make the call on whether there was a violation of the proposed statute to even start the process. Either Inslee was knowingly lying, or he should have prepared better before misfiring a metaphor at a news conference. While lawsuits are working their way through the courts, there will be many opinions, and calling an opinion a lie is premature. No one should fear voicing an opinion on an election. A democracy requires citizens to take responsibility for sorting out the facts, and with confidence all legal votes will be properly counted. As Inslee said in his testimony before the committee last week, quote, "We have to have confidence to have a functioning democracy," end quote. Senator Jeff Wilson, Republican of Longview and ranking Republican on the committee, proposes to rebuild voter confidence with SB 5650, requiring a reminder in every voter's pamphlet on the importance of election integrity and our responsibilities as voters. Quote, "Elections should always be a bipartisan discussion," he said. "Let's make our elections as secure and safe as they possibly can be," end quote. Adding a warning label to the voter's pamphlet is a simple, almost no-cost reminder to both brand new and seasoned voters. Wilson testified against SB 5843 for, quote, "one reason and only one reason, the First Amendment. We need to take the time to listen and learn what people are saying," end quote. You can't hear what people are saying if you stifle speech. Committee Chairman Senator Sam Hunt, Democrat of Olympia, cited Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr.'s famous phrase to defend SB 5843. But while shouting fire in a crowded theater is a bad idea, it is not a justification for abandoning the First Amendment, according to some constitutional scholars. Quote, "The phrase originated in a case that did not involve yelling or fires or crowds or theaters. end quote, according to an analysis by Jeff Kosseff in an Atlantic article titled America's Favorite Flimsy Pretext for Limiting Free Speech. Kosseff points out that Holmes changed course in a later case in Abrams versus United States, saying, quote, the best test of truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market, close quote. As always, the cure for bad speech is better speech. Well, it's always a good Thursday morning when the first emails after publication are positive ones. And Dick McDougall of Spokane is a new correspondent who sent his thanks and even suggested I should run for governor, but said, I like you too much to actually wish that upon you. Well, Dick, thanks for the vote of confidence, but my husband says the only way I can run for governor is if there's room to bring the whole goat herd for the winter, and I don't recall there being a barn at the governor's mansion. James Brink writes frequently and always has a lot of thoughtful input. Quoting from his response this week, James says, the entire premise, as I see it, in SB 5843 is that the average voter is not intelligent enough to avoid the traps set by people wanting to mislead voters. Only Big Brother can protect you. All the would-be Big Brothers propose to remove the traps rather than prepare people to recognize them and avoid them. While this is happening, evil people are free, and freer than before, to devise and deploy more subtle traps. The proposed, and in my opinion, misguided legislation you are reviewing focuses on the wrong crisis and creates, intentionally, a silencing of those interested in exposing all traps. Well, thanks, Dr. J, for your input. It's always good to hear from you. William Chappell was the first naysayer of the week, starting off by denying he's a regular reader and then goes on a long rant about how there are no problems with elections and anyone who says so is, I'll let his words speak for themselves, and here's an excerpt. I generally don't read your column very often anymore. Other than that, the same reason I watch Fox News on occasion. The reason being to see how far away from reason, critical thought, rationality, recorded history, science, and yes, reality the right-wing propagandists have gone. Your article today declares that it is a matter of opinion as to whether our election system is fair. This goes to the very heart of the Tea Party platform that if you don't like a piece of reality, substitute your belief, feeling, or QAnon's diatribe in its place and keep yelling and that will make it true. End of quote. He goes on in the same vein. Congratulations, William, on managing to work so many stereotypes into one paragraph. But here's the problem. Reeling off a list of intended insults and then yelling, there are no problems with our election system, doesn't make it true either. Yelling calm down has never calmed anyone down in the history of the world. The column was not an invitation to debate the 2020 election. The question is whether SB 5843, making it a gross misdemeanor to ever again in the future express an opinion critical of how an election was run, is a law. Will that law build voter confidence or destroy it? William goes on to say and insist a significant majority of American voters, this is his quote, a significant majority of American voters would never vote for a Republican simply because they do not represent their needs, end of his quote. And on that, he is very wrong, perhaps not knowingly wrong, but still a false statement. According to the January 2022 Crosscut Elway poll of voters, 29% of voters identified as Republican, up from 18% last summer, 36% as Democrats, which is down 4%, leaving 35% of voters open to persuasion. So definitely not a significant majority in any category, and a Democratic demographic losing steam. Perhaps all that constant complaining about elections not being fair is contributing to their problem. Because voter suppression is even rarer than voter fraud, but both are possible and need to be identified and addressed. At this point, voter confidence has wavered on both the left and the right. This is not a right-left issue, it's a confidence issue, and no politician ever built public confidence by shutting down conversation. So I'm Sulani Madsen, that's my opinion. Join me again on Forthright by subscribing at sulanimadsen.substack.com or the Spokane Talks Media YouTube channel.